Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. With us today is Daniel McAdams, our co-host. Daniel, good to see you.
Happy Thursday, Dr. Paul. How are you today?
Good. Looking forward to the weekend.
Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe the sun will come out and I'll go ride a bike.
Yeah, I may do the same.
Well, but right now we want to talk about how we've solved all the problems. If we solved all our problems, we wouldn't have much to do.
No, we could sit here drinking pina coladas.
But if you know about that much history, you'll realize our problems aren't going to go away. I think we're talking, in many ways, universal problems that have been around for a long time. Mean and nasty people and other people who are trying to bring about peace. But anyway, today we want to talk about. No, that's not right. She's not your favorite senator. Senator Elizabeth Warren is being sued, and you may even applaud that. I hope it's legitimate and all that sort of thing. But she asked Amazon pressured Amazon to not print a book that she didn't like. And this was written by Joseph Mercola.
Yeah, our friend.
So it didn't fit her scenario, and so therefore she wanted it published. But now the publisher is suing.
Yeah.
So it entertains a little bit of legal questions. Should the government be involved? Can they do that and sue people for certain things? And the whole thing is she's government and she's regulating speech. I don't think it's a big stretch to say that she's stepped over the line.
Yeah. Well, this is our theme today because it's not only Senator Warren, but it's also the Surgeon General of the United States. We can put up that first clip because the Surgeon General, Vivek Murthy, he went on MSNBC and said, we got to put a stop to this Joe Rogan guy. We got to pull the plug on him. We got to silence this guy. He is saying the wrong things. What they really hate is the fact that people watch Joe Rogan and listen to Joe Rogan and they don't watch or listen to MSNBC, and they're so jealous they can't stand it because he doesn't reduce people to sound bites. He talks in long form and he lets people say what they want to say. But both of these together are the main theme today, and they're both chilling because you're seeing, and this is what you've said all along, Dr. Paul, is that these tech companies are acting as agents of the government, and now we see that government officials openly encouraging and demanding that they act like the government's agents.
Yeah, when it came to social media, this is a little bit different because you could have something on and you get canceled and you lose your so-called privileges of posting, which was implied that you could do it. It was, as far as I'm concerned, there was a pretty strong implied contract with so it signaled it out, and it was usually in support of some government position and carrying out government orders. So that became more difficult, especially those of us who care about private property rights, and we shouldn't violate, these standards. This is a little bit different now, though, because they're saying this was an official paper when Elizabeth Warren wrote this.
Yeah.
Like an official document. I'm here from the government. I'm here to help you. You so you better not do that. And that technique's probably been around for a long time. It's always subtle. You do this and you will be rewarded and this sort of thing. And that sort of has run rampant with COVID because the government does all the mandates, but they don't carry them out. They have their allies in the business community. They carry it out and do things that they probably wouldn't have done otherwise. And they say, this is private. This is private. So the whole thing is that the definitions become a little bit more murky. And that's why it's great to come along and have some journalists and some attorneys who are libertarian-minded.
Well, you don't have a bunch of Nazi thugs around a bonfire, but this is essentially a book burning, what Senator Warren's doing. It's a high-tech book burning is what it is. And her complaint is that there is information in Dr. Mercola's book that's not accepted by people that she respects. So therefore, you're not allowed to read it. But as we know, the idea of science being settled is untrue. You remember Alex Berenson was banned for life from Twitter for saying that the shots don't prevent infection and spreading the virus. And of course, that is admitted now. So the things that Mercola was saying, I don't know, I haven't read the book, but the whole idea that, we have to shut it down because it's not saying what we currently know. Well, if that was a standard, then Fauci would be canceled
Right.
a year ago. But the Rogan one is also really concerning. And the thing is, so he goes on MSNBC, he goes on Mika Brzezinski's show, and she is green with envy and jealousy. She would love to have, because when Rogan had Dr. Malone on, he got 50 million views. I'm sure she doesn't get that in a month, and that's why she's just seething with hatred and jealousy. And so she asked the U.S. Surgeon General, what do you think are the best ways to push back on misinformation about COVID that continues to be aggressively pushed, whether it would be Joe Rogan's podcast or all over Facebook? So she's saying, how can you shut these people up? How can you not let people communicate? And of course, he's a mealy-mouthed little guy. We can have the best science available. We can have the best public health expertise available, but it won't help people if they don't have access to accurate information. Like we've never heard from anyone, get the shot, get the shot, get the shot.
And they will be the judge.
Yeah,
of,
they will be
of
the
what's
judge.
good and what's bad. But I think the Surgeon General alluded to the fact that this was necessary, because he actually alluded to the fact that big tech needs protection, and they play an important role in our society. So we have to keep our eyes on them, and they will help take care of us, our propaganda machine. So that is a significant event, but it's sort of a mixture. I think it's a loss now of the purity of what the First Amendment was all about. I bet we went a long time when there wasn't so much activity in opposition to free expression. I like the old days when the ACLU would defend some of the worst kind of people.
Yeah.
And when I remember those cases when I was pretty young. Now I would ask people, a smart adult, I said, why do they do these? These people are terrible. And they said, well, that's important, that people have a right to say things that are controversial. Matter of fact, that's why you have a First Amendment. And this is something that's long gone. That is not automatic right now. It's you have to really fight. And this is why this publishing company certainly is doing us all a service.
Yeah, it is. It is indeed. And they don't want to debate. They want sound bites, and that's what Mika Brzezinski is going on. She wants to control a little tiny sound bite where you can get someone to say what you already think, and you call yourself a journalist. Whereas what Rogan does is he sits down for 3 hours and has it out, and he doesn't always agree with the people he has on. Some people he disagrees with. I think he had Geraldo Rivera on a while ago, and they disagreed. And people are enjoying this because they're getting tired of their lives being reduced to sound bites. So I would just say that Senator Warren and the Surgeon General of the U.S. are deeply anti-American in this approach. And definitely the Surgeon General should be fired for saying this.
Well, most of the time we think of truth and falsehoods, a very, very clear-cut line. But there's times when it does get a little bit mixed up and needs a debate. That's why if you have a strong opinion on one side and a strong one on the other side, the answer isn't just giving all the authority to the one who has the government clout, and that's how you're going to settle the dispute. It's sort of like the dispute that's been going on with COVID, about the treatment. The doctors weren't even allowed to debate it. You mention a word, should be competition, and there's things like natural. Oh, we've canceled out natural immunity long ago. That doesn't exist anymore. That's back when you were in medical school. It doesn't exist now.
And that's the other thing too, though. You're right. Now we're finally able to talk about natural immunity, whereas you'd get canceled, like Murtha wants Rogan to get canceled, if you'd said it a year ago. We're now talking about, in the administration itself, Walensky's talking about, well, we need to make a distinction between died from COVID and with COVID. That, if you would have said that a year ago, you would have been canceled as well. So these things change over time. So the idea that you can just kind of put a lid on things and everything stays in stasis is totally wrong. But you can imagine, for 4 years, we heard nothing but Trump is bullying the media. Trump is bullying the media. How terrible. Well, this is clearly this administration bullying the media in a very substantive way.
Yeah, I can just imagine what they'd be doing with Trump right now on some of the things they're complaining about. And we can imagine some of the things that Trump might do too.
Well, that actually leads us to our next topic, and if we can actually pull up that third clip, because we talked over the first two clips, but as you say, imagine what they would do if Trump said something like this. Here's from Newsweek. Biden's pledge to nominate black woman to SCOTUS, Supreme Court of the U.S., in spotlight as Breyer plans retirement.
Well, that is attention getting.
Yeah.
You know, it's part of this thing. This is connected, you know, with this whole movement, the Black Lives Movement, and the wokeism, the whole thing. And what they want to do is to be able to cancel people, you know, black them out, and this is what they're trying to do. And but Biden comes along, and the only thing I can say is they were able to take clips from the fact that he said this before.
Yeah, he's done it many times.
He was already committed to this, but it was nobody challenged him on that. But it's a fact that he thinks he can cancel it. So instead of saying what he is for, which some people say, well, that's what he's supposed to do. I'm for ABC. Instead of that, he says, I'll tell you what I'm not for.
Yeah.
What I will not entertain, because we don't need to have a discussion over this. We don't need to have an input. We don't need the senators to have to advise and consent and know what they believe in. This is it. There's going to be, and I did have a list of what you're not allowed. Well, everything else is off limits.
Yeah.
You know, if you don't happen to be a black woman. And I think that we haven't done too badly on what has happened in the last 20, 30, 40 years. Certainly there's some blacks on the Supreme Court. So I think that, yes, it's imperfect, but is this a perfection that we should rally around and say, well, the best way to do this, to correct these problems, is to take liberty away from somebody else. They think if you take liberty from some people, the person you're giving it to with an affirmative action type of program, all of a sudden they're going to be more free. You can't transfer freedom. And that's what they do. They think freedom only exists by destroying the freedom of others.
Yeah.
But it has to be by giving both sides freedom. And then we're going to work a much better chance of it working.
You know, the thing about this is there's a long history of Biden acting this way, and for all of the talk on the left about diversity, what Biden is doing is he's weaponizing blacks. He's weaponizing blacks as a political tool rather than viewing them as human beings with complex sets of interests, complex sets of political views. He would hate to see a Clarence Thomas, wouldn't he? He would despise it. But here's a quote from that article, though, Dr. Paul, that I think really encompasses I hate to use the word racist, but the terrible approach of Biden on this. If we can put up that next clip. This is what Biden said. I am committed that if I'm elected president, this is last May, May of 20, and have the opportunity to appoint someone to the courts, I'll appoint the first black woman to the courts, Biden said. Quote, it's required that they have representation now. It's long overdue. You think about that. The idea that people on the court only represent their skin color or their gender or their what have you. I thought they were supposed to represent the Constitution.
You know, this has been annoying, and it's annoyed a lot of people, and it's gotten a lot of attention because of the significance of this. But what is it, a couple of months ago when during the campaign, when he blurted out and he was talking to a black gentleman who I thought was just trying to get information. I thought he might have even been a supporter and all.
Yeah.
But I think he asked a question that sounded like, well, he might be doubtful, and he was asking the president something, and the candidate for president, Biden, sort of exploded on this. So his definition of all this was, you know, if you ain't for me, he said, if you're not voting for me, you ain't black.
Yeah.
And I thought, how could anything be so crude and revealing by an attitude like that? And certainly it can be legal. I mean, free expression is not illegal, but it was sure a revelation of character and a revelation of good judgment. And yet They put him in the basement. We didn't want to hear from him. He became president of the world.
The most votes
now
in
he's
history.
in full charge of all our civil liberties.
Yeah, he does provide humor every day though when he talks.
Yeah.
But anyways, talk
That's
about
the only way I can get by.
I don't mind that part actually. I don't mind having a comedian like that for president. But it really is a dehumanizing effect toward blacks. He says, "Hey, if you don't vote for me, you ain't black." It's just so dehumanizing. It's like you'd hear something on a plantation or something in the days of old. It's really awful.
But you know, Daniel, I think the number of blacks that would not be offended by what we're saying are pretty numerous because they don't get airtime on most of the TV networks. But I've seen some on there that understand this very clearly. And certainly a good friend of mine, no longer with us, Walter Williams, he understood this so clearly that he thought it was an insult for somebody to come along and say, "Who's your black leader?"
Yeah.
I mean, he just couldn't stand that.
Yeah.
He says, "I don't need a black leader." Yeah. He was more interested in economics and sound economic policies and trying to get away from all that. And he did a good job, and he had a great contribution on economics. Yeah. So he was somebody I really admired.
He was a great man. I had the chance to drive him once, and it was really in the presence of greatness. Well, I guess we'll move on to the next one because this is a story that nobody is covering in the mainstream media. It is a massive, massive story that is totally ignored, and it just shows you how Soviet our media is. Let's put on that next clip. This is from the Toronto Sun. The only thing I've seen mentioning it. Trucker convoy took 2 hours to roll through town. This is called the 2022 Convoy for Freedom in Canada. It's a convoy of trucks across the entire country. We're talking 50,000 trucks. The convoy reaches 100 miles long, nearly 100 miles long, and the participants are 1.4 million. It is a massive, massive protest. It's against the vax mandate on truckers, which you talked about a while ago. It's against all the restrictions in society in Canada, and it is so massive. And in fact, if you don't mind, let's look at a couple clips. And by the way, Trudeau, the Prime Minister, this is a bunch of fringe nobodies. Forget this. Well, let's watch what he says at first. Here's their Prime Minister. I think we play the first 15 seconds of this.
Small fringe minority of people who are on their way to Ottawa or who are holding unacceptable views that they're expressing do not represent.
They're just fringe people. But look, Dr. Paul, this is what fringe, a small, insignificant fringe looks like. Let's put up the next one. I think we want 20 seconds of this one. This is a small fringe group in Canada. The thing is pretty cold in Canada, my guess is, especially at night. Watch this. These are people out on a cold night cheering this massive, they say it's a world record, never in history. And one more clip, this is during the day of the same rally in Canada. Let's look at that next one. We can play the whole clip. This is them this is how they're being greeted by Canadians. This is the small fringe. It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing.
You have to admit it's a small portion of what's going on because I think this is mostly the people coming from the west and going east, going to Ontario.
Yeah, they're going to Ottawa. Yeah.
And now they're finding out that they're organizing in the east and coming together, and some truckers coming from U.S. going up there. So no, this is great. You know, we're always cautious in using the word democracy because it's so misused. Democracy means the dictatorship of the majority. If you can put them all together, and they can take away your rights. That's not this kind of democracy. This is democracy. This is people speaking out, and it's part of the marketplace. I've always been taught that true democracy, from a libertarian viewpoint, is the marketplace and the pricing mechanism, what you buy and sell and who benefits, you know, and they have you know, so much control over the market. But this is the marketplace working, and I was thinking while you were showing that, go Canada.
Yeah.
But it's a little bit bigger than this. Is what I'm delighted there's some coming from the United States and moving up there, and it's all they keep doing this even out of desperation because they're close to the end of the pandemic, which was always fudged a bit. The whole seriousness of it.
But Trudeau is a deeply evil person. I have to say that. This is the same guy that said if you don't want to get a vaccine, you are a racist and a misogynist, and you shouldn't be in polite society. He's saying that this is a fringe group. I think he's losing it. I think he's seeing the damage that he's done to the country. And if you see all of these people, these are blue collar, these are the real people of Canada, and they've had it and they're fed up. I think it's a tremendous moment.
Well, I have a suggestion for him. He should take a trip to London and visit with their prime minister.
Yeah.
Maybe they can work out a better solution to what they're doing. And I think the solution could be done in one sentence if they were to listen to somebody with a different attitude.
Well, do you want to do a little update on Ukraine? We can put up that last clip. This is from Dave DeCamp over at antiwar.com. Great piece. And this says, I think, almost everything, Dr. Paul, because while the U.S. is saber-rattling and sending weapons and saying that a invasion by Russia into Ukraine is imminent, the grown-ups in the room went to Paris. This is the Normandy 4 group. This is Russia, Ukraine, Germany, and France. They went there yesterday. They met in Paris. They sat for 8 hours, and they agreed to uphold the ceasefire. They agreed to tone down the tensions. And what it tells you is for all the bellicosity, I think, of U.S. foreign policy, all the bellicosity of the Biden administration, the desperation to heap up conflict, the U.S. has become irrelevant. They're absolutely irrelevant to the situation. The adults sat down and said, okay, guys, this tension is getting too high. What are we going to do? Let's get on track to solve it.
To me, this is proof that this group getting together, they're more local, we're not involved, they're making more progress. It's not in our news every night, and yet it's very, very significant. And what are we doing? We're pumping up probably 80 or 90% of the news, hopefully it isn't that bad, is nothing more than warmongering. Because peace is going to break out. What are we going to do about this? I know, regardless, we have to show there's a danger because that's why we're building more weapons. We need more weapons. So all of a sudden, guess what? Republicans sometimes argue with the Democrats, and they have their conflicts, but not on this. They're rushing back, and I think they're going to go with they'll go with Pelosi. She's rushing this, but I'm sure you noticed this. But this was they were going to have no hearings. No hearings.
No markup.
Which no markup. No public debate. Really, actually, that didn't. Sometimes they did that. Matter of fact, they brought some of those worst kind of things up when we were there under suspension. That would be the biggest insult of all if they put that up under suspension and passed. I would say the American people better wake up and find out who's representing them there. I mean, just the principle's wrong and the practicality of it's wrong, and yet that's what they're doing. The answer to this is it looks like peace could break out, and we got to prove that we need to be scared. Be scared, and this is what we're going to do, and build more weapons. And guess what? Military-industrial complex. That sounds like a pretty good idea.
Exactly. $500 million. I wrote about it. It's on Mises.org today, and I think it's on Lou's site. But about this massive, massive bill. So while the grown-ups are getting together and saying, hey, let's calm it down, the Germans sent some helmets. They refused to send weapons. They sent some helmets. While they're doing that, we're trying to ramp it up. So that just goes to show. I mean, when you act like the world is going to take orders from you, you started becoming irrelevant, and that's what's happening. So I think we're done. The last thing I was going to say, Dr. Paul, is a couple pieces of good news that we didn't get a chance to fit into today's show. But as of yesterday, Denmark has ended almost all COVID restrictions, and as of today, all restrictions in the UK are gone. So people are going to pubs, are having a great time. The UK one, of course, is because Boris Johnson is on his way out. But nevertheless, I think really we'll look back in history as this might be the day that the Berlin Wall of COVID has started to fall.
There you go, and I think there are signs of it, but the one thing, if they run out of steam and they can't pump up what's going on in Ukraine, they'll find another place. And matter of fact, they always keep 2 or 3 going at a time. There's still the smoldering embers of what's going on in the Middle East, but relatively quiet. But the Far East is not doing so well. We're still very much involved there. But I think that unfortunately for us, our policy is doing exactly what we claim that we can't allow to happen, that the Chinese can make any advances, although, we gracefully and actually buy a lot of stuff from there because the prices are better. So we're participating at the same time. We blame them, just like we blame Russia for everything. People should, be responsible for themselves, but a country should be responsible for themselves, and collectively they should not be, always looking to blame somebody else. If we have policies, monetary policies, foreign policy policies that aggravate, why is it unpatriotic to mention it? I would think it's unpatriotic to deny it and hide the truth. And believe me, there's a lot of truth hidden there, and it doesn't come up. And when you think about the commissions that we have set up in the last 100 years to sort out the truth, we realize that the truth is usually hidden from the people. And that's gone on, I guess, throughout all history, because the politicians don't want to be blamed. That's why when I think about all this and how are we going to do this, how are we going to get better people in there to do it, and I've decided a long time ago that the solution to our economic problems and spending less money and balancing the budget, there's a lot of factors involved, but the one thing is it's not going to come from the people there, and it's not going to be it will not come from bigger government. What we need is less government designed for concentrating on one principle, and that is how do we restore and make sure the individual people in the country have their liberties. Protecting liberty is a lot better approach than saying, oh, we're going to take care of you from cradle to grave, and we are going to protect the markets, and we're going to do this overseas, and an empire is good for business, on and on. It's a bad system, so it's a big problem. And the answer that I'm alluding to isn't going to come from the people I knew in Washington. A few, yes, they know about it, but it's a big secret. Don't expect the universities to come along and teach, real history about what personal liberty is all about. That's not going to happen either. But in spite of the shortcomings of the internet, the effort to get a message out about, living in a free country and emphasizing personal liberty and looking to get people to understand why the absence of the initiation of force against other people is not complicated. You don't hurt other people and you fulfill your contracts. And those are the rules you have, and yet they make it complicated. So if you have a regulation, I'm still astounded, but not surprised, I guess. When you look at some things going on, I bet you if you looked at every executive order in the last 2 years regarding COVID, now that the states have caught on to executive orders and bureaucracy, it's huge. That is not the way to manage a country or promote liberty. There's a much better and easier way. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today to the Liberty Report. Please come back soon.